Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast / Facebook Live Instant Reaction. Look at that beautiful blue sky from Ohio State's 42-0 win over the Bearcats, Cincinnati Bearcats. I am Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom Orr. And Tom, this was the game that Ryan Day promised to the people way back when he took over. And I don't know if he actually promised it, but maybe it's the game he owed the people. It was as good as they've looked all year long. It was similar to the first half against Florida Atlantic, but they kept it going. And not that they kept the points going, but the defense stayed on it. The running game stayed on it. But that second quarter was really impressive. So it wasn't just a 9-minute game this time around. They actually put 4 good quarters together. And this was... It was a statement against a good team. We don't know how good Cincinnati is, but we know they're not idiots. We know they're not buffoons, playing around and just running around. So a lot of good to take from this, but we have to be careful not to make too much of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, this was coming out of week 1, and actually in my game prediction for this game, I talked about the fact that you don't want to overreact to week 1, and you also don't want to overreact to week 2. Like, if you wanted to overreact to week 2, you could run around outside twirling your pants around your head as an Ohio State fan. If you wanted to do that, it's probably a little early, right? But you have not seen Ohio State just completely dominate all 3 phases of the game like they did today against a quality opponent. I'm not talking about Rutgers. I'm not talking about some non-conference team. Probably since the Michigan State game in 2017 is the last time you saw them just completely just throttle an opponent, both sides of the ball, completely, thoroughly, 60 minutes just absolutely kicking someone's butt.
Yeah, and I think the running game had a lot to do with that, where it makes you feel better. And the funny thing is, they rushed for 270 yards this week, rushed for 237 last week. But it sure feels a lot better than just 37 yards better. This was a different running game because we got to see J.K. Dobbins, I believe as a freshman, he returned. This is the first time we've seen him running like that. Second longest run of his career, a 60-yarder. And he was getting out on the edge. And really, for me, that's what we've been wanting to see. And not that he can't run inside, but he was able to get to the edge, to the hole, and beat everybody to just be able to get to the end zone on that one. It's been a while since he's been able to reach the end zone on a long run and not get tracked down. And I was waiting for him to get tracked down on this one, but he made it. And he finished with 141 yards rushing on 17 carries, all of that in the first half. I believe he had 110 yards rushing in the second quarter on 10 carries with 2 touchdowns. So it was good to see him back. And we had heard all along from Tony Alford, from Ryan Day, that this was what he does, what he was doing in camp, and what he did in the spring. And he had the right mindset in the off season. And then last week, we didn't see it. And we saw him running hard, running tough here and there, but there just wasn't the explosion of the big plays that we maybe had expected, and it was a little bit more difficult than we thought it should be against Florida Atlantic. Here he had some nice runs, looked comfortable, and Ryan Day said after the game that J.K. was pretty mad about last week's performance, and he came into this one determined to better his stat line, or just better his performance from last week.
Yeah, he and J.K. said the same thing, that he was pretty frustrated last week, just didn't feel like he was running the way he needed to, didn't feel like he was running the way he was capable of running, and you saw that today. I mean, the 60-yard touchdown was kind of the exclamation point kind of moment for the day. But he ran very consistently all day. He averaged 8.3 yards per carry, and the 60-yarder obviously helps with that. But take that one out, and he was still 16 carries for 81 yards. So that's still over 5 yards a carry, or basically right at 5 yards a carry, which is, he was at 4.3 last week. I mean, and so that's a big step forward. He ran hard. He had a big play where he had a kind of a ceiling block on Justin Fields' rushing touchdown in the third quarter. I mean, there was a lot to like from him. And part and parcel with J.K. Dobbins having a big day on the ground. That offensive line, I mean, last week all 5 offensive linemen were named champions. And you kind of watched the game and it was like, yeah, I guess. Like, it was okay. This was Ohio State just asserting its will and dominating in the trenches, really on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if the 5 offensive linemen starters graded champion again. They gave up 1 sack, but that wasn't really their fault. That was, 2 guys on a route with a max protect and Justin Fields holding it until about, Mississippi 10 Mississippi, and then he finally got sacked when Ryan Day wanted him to throw the ball away. But, yeah, a good performance on the ground. Justin Fields had 9 carries for 42 yards and 2 touchdowns. The first touchdown was Ryan Day's favorite play from Fields, where he said it was a play action, and they were either anticipating man or zone and got the other, and so rather than throw it into coverage or something like that, Fields saw a field available to him and ran it up in the middle for a 5 or 6 yard touchdown, and just a really good command of the offense today, where he was 20 of 25 passing for 224 yards, had at least 2 throwaways, and that's pretty darn good. And I can't remember which one of us this morning was talking about, if he's not totally accurate today, don't get too upset. I can't remember which one of us said that. But I was blown away. 20 of 25 with 2 throwaways. Looks, and I don't know that they're asking him to throw the most difficult passes. No. But he's putting it where it needs to be, and there were no backwards laterals today. And they said they would work on that throughout the week, and they did. And just, you know what? This looked like he might be the guy.
I think that Justin Fields might have a future in this game of football. That may be the takeaway from today. This is, again, they're sort of ramping him up. They're still implementing some stuff. I would imagine that what you've seen right now is about 30 to 40% of what you will see by the end of the season, just in terms of the offense and plays and concepts and all that kind of stuff. I think he's way ahead of where I thought he would be. I was probably a little more pessimistic about what this Ohio State season might look like than the average person in Columbus, where there were some questions in the offensive line. There were questions about what the defense would look like. There were questions about exactly how accurate Fields would be. And all of those things were things that any of them could have kind of derailed the season a little bit. What we've seen from Fields right now, I mean, don't book your tickets for the college football playoff just yet. But what we've seen from Fields right now is way ahead of where I thought Fields would be at this time of year. I thought they were going to kind of have to really lean on the run, really rely on J.K. Dobbins and the line to kind of carry the offense, and then you establish the run, and that opens things up and makes things a little easier for Fields in the passing game. That hasn't been the case. They have been able to throw basically whenever they wanted to for the most part in the first couple weeks, and that is one of the most encouraging things you could possibly see if you're an Ohio State fan.
An interesting thing is they could throw more if they wanted to, and it would be effective, but they're running the ball well enough. They're staying balanced. Fields doesn't even have a 300-yard game yet, and it's 2 games in. But I think at this point, Haskins would have had 2. Last year,
believe it or not, there was actually a time when people didn't throw for like 400 yards every week for Ohio State. There was a time. More. It was approximately 1890 through 2017, 2019 through present.
Because what Fields is doing right now is pretty much what J.T. Barrett, I believe his name was. Where sometimes I think Fields had 170, 180 yards in the first half, but because they're up big, there's no need to double that number, and they are able to run the ball and move it, and as opposed to needing to throw the ball as much as they did last year because they weren't able to run it. And it's good to see a balanced offense, and one that doesn't have to rely on one guy. And it's Fields can do this, can do that. J.K. Dobbins. Maybe an unsung guy is Master Teague, where I would like to see him get some carries early on, but I know they want to get J.K. Dobbins rolling, and after 141 yards, why question that? But it's good to see Teague get in there. He runs hard, seems to be maybe a step or 2 away from breaking one of those because he's always fighting, and he's ripping at people, ripping at him, and he's trying to pull himself away, and it's fun to watch him at times where he is just trying to fight, and eventually he'll get loose and there'll be nobody behind him again.
Yeah, there was a run that I remember, and I think it only went for like a yard or something, where he hit the hole and there was a defensive lineman right there, and the guy grabbed him, and Teague just kept churning. And I don't know how many times he pumped his legs, but it was like 8, 10, where he was kind of going forward a little bit and then sort of swung sideways as this guy kind of had him, and he's still churning and still churning and still churning. Like you said it, he runs hard. He hits the hole hard. He runs hard. J.K. Dobbins is obviously capable of running between the tackles very effectively, but at some point, Teague is a guy who could be a very, very good short yardage in between the tackles kind of back for this team.
And I know Day had said that DeMario is the backup running back, back in camp or whatever, but it's pretty clear that it is Teague. And even though DeMario will get in there here and there, he is the third down back. Teague is the backup, the number 2, basically, if they need some yards. Teague, what he reminds me of, the way he runs, is when you see the videos of people being held back from getting into a fight, and the one guy is super angry and he wants to get at people, and all of his friends are trying to hold him back, and he's ripping, he's trying to pull himself away so he can go get into a fight. Teague is like the end zone is somebody who just disrespected him, and he is fighting like hell to get to that, and all of his friends are trying to, no, don't do it, and he's super angry. And I guess maybe that's, if I was a running back coach, that's how I would coach all of the running backs to run. Run like the end zone has disrespected you, and you want to go there and show it, give it a what for.
So you have a get back coach and a hold me back coach.
There you go.
That's
perfect.
Sure.
You got so many assistant coaches now, assistant to the assistants, and there's enough guys to go around. I would only work at a place where they had a lot of money to spend on a lot of coaches, though. So,
do you think Ohio State has money to spend on a lot of coaches? I don't know. Maybe too soon to say.
Well, we'll see. And we'll see how this next TV deal goes. The passing game, like I said, 20 for 25 Fields, 224 yards, 2 touchdowns. I am being more and more impressed each week by Benjamin Victor, who had a couple of catches last week, including one where he broke free and got some yards. He was 5 for 69 this week. Ryan Day raved about the back shoulder fade from him and Fields. I think that was his 20-yarder. He seems to be becoming a more, I don't know, maybe are Justin Fields and Benjamin Victor roommates?
I don't know. That was the Austin Mack, Dwayne Haskins story all year last year, and it does seem like there's a pretty good connection there. I mean, Benjamin Victor, from day one when he showed up at Ohio State, when he weighed about 115 pounds, he has always been someone who was like, oh man, I can't wait to see what this guy looks like when he finally puts it all together. And it's been kind of a long journey to get to that point, and he's had his moments. And as soon as I say that, everyone immediately says Penn State last year, which that was kind of his signature moment so far in his career.
But to be fair, we didn't get to see that live.
That's true. We were underneath Beaver Stadium because they were being extremely militant about the media on the field policy. But yeah, I mean, 5 catches for 69 yards today. The leading receiver in terms of yardage on the team. He is someone who they have moved Austin Mack off of that X spot. Now Austin Mack is over at the Z. So Ben Victor is more or less that's his spot at X, and he seems like he's making the most of that opportunity.
Yeah, we saw a little bit of Jalen Harris finally today. Got to see some of Garrett Wilson, who had the touchdown catch, and at this point, that surprises nobody because you saw that in the spring game. You, to the people out there, you saw him do that in the spring game. I think Justin Fields said it was no big deal. That's what he does. That's, if anybody has seen any portion of practice that involved a pass in the air, you've probably seen that from Garrett Wilson already. So it was good to see them go at him. I would like to see maybe 15, 16 more throws to him per game. Let's just see what happens.
Seems like a lot, but okay.
But I'm just saying, I don't think Dobbins needs to touch it so much. But yeah, it was good to see from him. KJ Hill, 8 for 57 with the touchdown. He seems to be back to maybe the 2017 form where he's moving it in little chunks going east and west. And we'll see if his role develops to where he's making bigger plays. And maybe right now defenses are just staying in, keeping everything in front, and that makes everything easier to defend. And we'll see how it goes from there. But just a very consistent day, very easy. Easy throws. He had time to throw. Justin Fields did. Receivers, when they would get the ball, they would be open by a few yards, and it's a credit to their precision, running routes, setting the defenders up, which they do remarkably well. And they're really clicking right now, quarterbacks and receivers, and they haven't been working together for a long time. But they've made the most of the time that they've had together since January.
Yeah, the skill players on Ohio State. I mean, you're consistently going to have better skill players than your opponents if you're the Ohio State coaching staff. So that's what it should look like. It has not always looked like that in the past, but that is certainly what it has looked like this year. And another part of that story is you have an offensive line up front that is giving those wide receivers time to maybe run some double moves, that kind of stuff. Give Justin Fields a chance to have a clean pocket to step up into if he needs to step up to throw, to buy time. I mean, that's all of these pieces fit together, and all of the pieces were working for Ohio State. The offensive line looked good today. The running game looked good today. Fields looked good today. The wide receivers looked good today. And that doesn't even get into the defense, which, oh, by the way, gave up 0 points.
Well, and that's where I wanted to go next. If you were done raving about the offense, can we now go and rave about the defense?
Okay, one thing that didn't go well today, Gerd didn't recognize transitions very well during the podcast, but that's okay. Go ahead, we'll spell it out for you. Now we're transitioning to defense. Go ahead, Gerd.
And I'll credit you because I turned my box score sheet over to the defense, and you seamlessly went with it. But then you shut the show completely down by acknowledging my failure to proceed with you seamlessly. So that's pretty much your fault. So I'm going to the biggest play that the Buckeyes gave up today was the pass given up to Damon Arnett again. Deep pass to Damon Arnett. Go figure. What a surprise. I'm so sick of that guy. Why did that happen?
It was a 46-yard pass right at the end of the game. And Jeff Hafley came out and right away said, look, I want to just get this out. Make sure everyone knows that was on me, meaning that was on Jeff Hafley. Because the previous drive, Jeff Hafley had told Damon Arnett, you're done for the day. Damon Arnett's unbuckling his shoulder pads, helmet off, he's done for the day. And then Sevyn Banks gets hurt on that kickoff right before that drive. And so then Arnett has to run back out there. He thought he was done for the day. He's unbuckled. He's kind of mentally shifted into game. The game is over. He gets thrown out there, which is not really a fair position to put him in. And then he gives up that long completion. You didn't see that against him pretty much all day. So the fact that you saw that one, it was, even watching it live, it was like, yeah, okay, they're probably they've moved on to Indiana already to some degree, but there was a real reason why. And Jeff Hafley said that is 100% on him, not at all on Damon Arnett. So if you tweeted something unfortunate about Damon Arnett in the closing moments of a 42-0 win, right, you can go ahead and delete it. He didn't. It was not on him.
If you're angrily tweeting something after at the end of a 42-0 win, delete that anyway. So the Ohio State defense gave up 107 yards rushing, 166 passing. 79 of those 107 rushing yards came on the last drive.
Yep.
Where it was all back up, second and third string in there, and they ran it down. I didn't get to see it. I was on my way downstairs. But, not a surprise that maybe they get some yards up at that point. But what Ryan Day liked at the end was that they stripped the ball, forced a fumble, recovered it in the end zone. So it showed that even though they were getting run on, they didn't quit at the end. So a very impressive day overall for the Ohio State defense. And we expected a rough outing for the Cincinnati running game. And we definitely saw that. Michael Warren, their starting running back, had 15 yards rushing on 10 attempts, which was impressive. Tavion Thomas, the former 4-star kid from Ohio, 58 yards on 11 carries, but again, that was after the fact essentially. And Ben Bryant, the backup quarterback, came in when Desmond Ridder got hurt and I think he had a 20-yard run while I was on my way downstairs as well. So fake yards, essentially. All of your football stat nerds would take out that last drive, I'm assuming, right?
Yes, that is. They were well into garbage time at that point. probably basically the whole second half would have been considered garbage time and wouldn't count against them in any kind of advanced stats. Yeah, Tavion Thomas, 8 carries for 43 yards in that fourth quarter. That's all against those backups. And if you were looking for something to be worried about and something to feel bad about, then yes, that is something you can feel bad about. The defensive second team for the second straight week gave up some yards. Again, they didn't give up any points, but they gave up some yards. There's a reason they're the second team. It's because they're not quite as good as the first team, that is kind of a true thing for pretty much every football program ever. So that's something that if you are an Ohio State coach, that is something you have my permission to be worried about. If you are an Ohio State football fan, it's going to be okay. They are not accidentally going to put the second team defense out there for the opening series against the Michigan game. So it'll be okay. And yes, you're going to have injuries. That is a thing that will happen during the course of a season. So some of those guys probably will end up playing a meaningful role later in the year, but it's not going to be all 11 of them.
Right.
And there's going to be, if it's 1 or 2 here and there, you can scheme around that, you can plan around that, and you can kind of prioritize which of those guys.
And they all learn from this. And
and they're all going to get better betwing now and whenever they're really needed.
And for so many areas on the defense, there are pretty much co-starters. So when you're talking about the backups, that's second, third, fourth string. Where it's it's not necessarily Tyreek Friday and Tyler Friday and Tyreek Smith out there. It's beyond, after them, and it's guys who really don't play much, and it's a chance for them. I was disappointed. Josh Proctor, no interception. That's probably the worst moment of the day for the defense. But Baron Browning and Tough Borland seem to be combining for a pretty decent middle linebacker. Baron Browning, we just continue to see him out there. 5 touchdowns. What a great day for a linebacker.
That would be a
5 tackles.
Day, yeah.
Didn't get into the backfield like I thought maybe he would. Malik Harrison, 2.5 tackles for loss, a half a sack, 5 tackles. And we probably should talk about him more, so let's do that right now. Tom?
I mean, we've talked about him a little bit last week where he was very steady. Even last year when everything else was on fire, he was pretty much fine.
He was the dog sitting at the table saying, "This is fine."
Yeah, this is fine. Yes, he was very consistent. He was never someone that people were complaining about. I mean, he has been a very solid, consistent player for them, and he's gotten better this year. And then you take the guys who were really the whipping boys last year, Tough Borland, Pete Werner. Both of them have looked significantly better. Pete Werner, I mean, I don't know, how many times did you see Pete Werner kind of drop way back to that kind of like deep safety spot?
He did it last week too. It's so odd.
That was very interesting. And Jeff Halfley was asked about it, and he said, "Yeah, we trust him to do that. We know he's fast, he's smart, he's going to put himself in a good spot, and so we trust him to do that." Now, there was one play in the first half, the one where Sean Wade came blitzing off the corner and had that strip sack. They rotated Werner back to that safety spot. So then you're rotating the defense. So your corner's blitzing, your safety's coming up to where the corner was, and Werner's going back to the safety spot. That opens up a world of other stuff you can do. And if they're willing to trust Pete Werner to play in a cover 1, I mean, that's a lot of faith, because you're back there, and if you take a bad angle, it's 6 points. So for them to have that level of faith in him, and that was not in the fourth quarter of a 42-point game. That was in the second quarter sometime. That was 7-0, 14-0. The game was still kind of in doubt at that point. That's a big thing. And I mean, the Ohio State coaching staff has just gushed about Pete Werner. I mean, multiple coaches have gushed about what a great player Pete Werner is, what a great resource he is for them, how he does everything the right way. They really love what he does. And the disconnect between that and the level of trust that you see them placing in him on an extremely good Ohio State defense this year, and what you saw last year, I mean, do you think that this is like an invasion of the body snatchers thing, and he's just a totally different person than he was last year? What could possibly be the difference? I don't know. Yeah,
that's a good question, and maybe one day science will figure it out. We don't know. Al Washington talked after the game, but I didn't get to talk with him. But I asked Jeff Okuda what his favorite aspect of this defense is, And it's just that they get to go, and it's the same answer every time you ask somebody. We just get to go play. Mm-hmm. We get to go have fun. We go get the ball. And he also said that the offense doesn't know what they're going to be doing because they can't switch it up, like you said.
Yeah.
You got one guy blitzing it, and it's just like everybody rotates. Everybody rotates around and covers the other guy. And I think with Pete Werner, it's almost like the quarterback, he's got a blitz coming. He sees somebody going back there, so he knows that it's covered. He probably doesn't even think that's a linebacker. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily like, I should at least attack this because it's a linebacker. He just sees a body back there, and now you got to run for your life. But there are moving parts, but it's done in a way that the entire defense operates in sync. And that part of that is the corners and the safeties being together. It's the linebackers and bullets being together, and but it all begins up front, where you've got Chase Young and Tyreek Smith had a sack today where I thought Tyreek Smith killed a guy today. Mm-hmm. Tommy Togiai had a personal foul, but
one of the softer personal fouls you're going to see.
The way I figure it, if you're a nose tackle and you run that far, you should be able to at least tap the quarterback, and that's pretty much all he did. That should be allowed, and I disagree with that. I think they should apply, send an appeal to the Big Ten and try to get that stricken from the record. Just this defense, Tom. It's fun to watch, which it's been a while since we've been able to say that about an Ohio State defense. And they don't miss tackles so far. The thing that struck me most, I think, is when there would be a little bit of a room for a running back, and there would be no defender there. The guy would still only get, be it Warren or Thomas or whomever, would only get like 3 yards, 4 yards before it would be closed down. Last year, who knows how far that would have gone. And even though they only lost like leverage, I think once, Tough Borland did. He got sucked back inside, but there was a corner or a safety there to keep the edge, and Tough was able to get that tackle. And it's really just like you said, it's night and day. They operate well. They know what they're doing, and when something goes wrong or something goes right for the offense, you're like, well, that's odd.
Yeah. It seemed last year it was like, wow, they got off the field in just 3 plays.
Look at the tackle. Good job.
I didn't know they could do that. And this year it's like, wow, what? The starting defense gave up 2 first downs? Like, what is going on? Jason has a question. Is this the scheme matching the players instead of trying to fit the players into the scheme on the defense? And I think it's literally as simple as it's more simple. Yeah. It is simplified. There's not as much trying to decide between 3 different things while you're running around in that exactly. 4 to 6 seconds. It's complicated because they're disguising stuff. Yeah. It's not complicated because they're trying, it's a choose your own adventure every single play. The Shaun Wade on that play that I was just talking about, he was blitzing. He's blitzing off the corner. He's not trying to do 3 different things. He's just blitzing off the corner. Now you've disguised it. You've complicated it for the opponent because of the way you're disguising it. You're rotating it in a way that normally teams don't have their linebacker go be their strong safety, or their free safety. You don't normally see that, and you didn't see that before, and you didn't see that the play after. But you've completely changed what the quarterback is seeing in front of him, without making it more complicated for your players. Yeah. That's the big difference. So, it's the scheme matching the players in as much as you have really good players. You don't need that complicated a scheme. Just put those players in a position to succeed and let them go do what they do. It really, I think, almost is just that simple this year.
Yeah, and when you have this much talent with as much versatility as they have, I think they could match up with a lot of schemes. They could do a lot of different things. Just don't ask them to do more than they're capable of. Right. That's all you can do. That's all you have to do. You can run a 4-4. You could run a 3-4. Do whatever you want. Just limit. Just don't over process them and have them doing too many things. You mentioned Shaun Wade. Let me see what his line was because I gotta find him here.
One tackle, 1 sack.
Yeah,
forced fumble.
But
2 passes broken up.
And the 2 passes broken up is what I want to talk about because that was another area of impact where he broke up 1 pass. It was dropped by Chase Young. Chase Young was very upset about that. Mm-hmm. Broke up another pass, caught by Tough Borland. So very nearly spearheads 2 possible pick sixes.
Mm-hmm.
And he's the guy where he's supposed to be catching those. Or we thought, he led the team in interceptions last year, led him in the spring, and where he's the guy who makes the plays on the ball. And he is making the plays on the ball, but now he's got other guys around. And we think of him as this cover guy. Mm-hmm. But he's also, and he showed this last year, he can be a hard-hitting safety when it's called upon.
Yeah. Yeah, and he has very much lived up to that this year. He's another one who we talked about this offseason, that he's kind of a little bit of a Swiss Army knife for him, where he can be a safety, he can be a slot corner, he can be an outside corner, he can do whatever they need him to do. The fact that you have that versatility is another way you can run a simple defense but make it look complicated for the opponent. We've had a couple people asking if we're in witness protection, or if we're mentioning that we're backlit. If you're watching on the Facebook live feed, the 2 choices because of the lighting in the coach's booth where we're sitting right now and outside with the combination of those 2 is you can see the beautiful stadium in pretty white clouds and a blue sky behind us, or you can actually see our faces and it will look like there's a nuclear winter going on behind us. So we opted to give you the pretty stadium and puffy clouds, so please enjoy. Mike says, week 2 hot take. Maryland is the team the sports media thought Michigan was going to be. Michigan is the team the sports media thought Maryland was going to be.
I mentioned Maryland to you, and I said this was while they were beating up on
a football team.
From the ACC.
Syracuse.
And I said they're the 5th best team in the Big Ten East, doing this to the 2nd best team in the ACC, and you're like, well, I don't know that they're actually the 5th best. You might.
I would put Maryland ahead of Michigan State right now. I mean, Penn State played Idaho last week, which is basically a bye week, and they hung 79 on them. Maryland basically played a bye week last week and hung 79.
That Michigan State-Maryland game will be an interesting contrast with the Maryland offense and the Michigan State defense.
And the Michigan game, Michigan lost that game. Even though they won that game, Michigan lost that game the day it was scheduled.
Yeah.
Nothing good happens when you play a service academy. Take absolutely nothing out of that game. I don't think Michigan is probably the legitimate Big Ten East champion to be.
Tom.
I thought those predictions were probably a little aggressive, but don't take today as...
Tom, they have a starting quarterback returning.
Yeah.
And his name is Shea Patterson.
Mm-hmm. That's true. They do. And I don't know if you heard, but they're trying to get speed in space. Big if true.
They have a new play caller, offensive coordinator, who has never called bad plays before this year.
That's true. Never one bad play before
Never
this year.
a single bad play called. So that's a pretty good batting average.
And if we want to go down a little rabbit hole, that Josh Gaddis, Mike Loxley little feud during the offseason, that game, all of a sudden, I don't know when Maryland plays Michigan, but all of a sudden that one's looking... That's looking a little interesting.
Yeah, and the background on that, they were both at Alabama last year. Mike Loxley said he called the plays last year, and Gaddis is like, well, yeah, but I'm the one who devised the offense and came up with the game plans. And Mike Loxley's like, oh, really? And they're going back and forth a little bit. So that's a fun matchup. Good job.
That's all of a sudden looking like a game to keep an eye on.
Yeah. Anything else on the defensive side of the ball? And getting back to Chase Young.
Yeah, Chase Young.
Said he was upset about dropping that. I asked him if he was going to hit the jugs machine after the game. He said he would. Ryan Day after the game said he nearly tore his Achilles jumping up when Chase Young had it in his hands.
Yeah.
Chase Young also blocked a field goal.
Yep.
To preserve the shutout. David Arnett comes down with it and then fumbles it.
Yeah.
And it was, they got the ball back, but just what a guy, what a player,
he is.
I don't mean like what a guy, what a guy, donates to charity.
Yeah. He has been everything you thought he could be this year. He's got 3 sacks on the year through 2 games, and very easily could have another sack and a half at least.
Because Malik Harrison stole one from him today. Jay Sean Cornell stole one from him last week.
And there was another one where he and Robert Landers kind of shared a sack. I mean, it is not out of the question that he could have 6 sacks right now through 2 weeks. That's Nick
Bosa last year.
I mean, he is well on his way to
and he's getting held. So watch.
There was one of the plays when it might have been a play where he ended up getting a sack, or someone else got a sack. But he was getting held coming off the edge, arm around his neck, held, and it didn't get called. Yeah, that was Cincinnati's offensive tackles. That freshman tackle against Chase Young. That was not a winning matchup for them. That was,
no, it wasn't.
And they really consistently didn't give him help, which I thought was kind of an interesting. I mean, we all make choices. That was a choice.
Nobody else wants to get into that poster. They don't want to get dunked on like that. Anything from the...
Michigan gets Maryland between Notre Dame and Michigan State. Nice little... man.
Is that at Maryland?
That is...
that's tasty.
That is a sandwich game if you've ever heard of one.
Tom, Ja'Shawn Cornell, 1 tackle, an assist, nothing in the backfield. Time to move him back to defensive end?
Yeah, I mean... He was quiet today, but he had a couple times when he was. I remember seeing him around the ball a few times, and I don't know if he didn't get credit with tackles and was just kind of there, but he was fine, and it wasn't like guys were blasting through the line and picking up huge yardage, and so it was a liability.
Right. No.
So.
Yeah, you credit the defensive tackles when they're shutting down the inside run, and they definitely did that.
Yeah, I mean, Cincinnati was a power inside run team, and their power inside running back averaged 1.5 yards per carry. So, yeah, I think the defensive line was fine.
My apologies.
I mean, that was something that we talked about consistently in the press box. During the game, Ohio State was dominating both lines of scrimmage. That is what it looks like when you dominate both lines of scrimmage. When you can get a consistent push on offense, open up holes, run the ball, give your quarterback time to throw, and then on the other side of the ball, the other team can't get a push, can't run the ball inside. Quarterback is getting chased all around the field. I mean, the old have to win the battle in the trenches thing that every coach says and has said since 1892. There's a reason they have said it. It is because it is true. It is because if you lose the battle in the trenches on both sides of the ball, that's what it looks like, and you lose by 42 points.
That's exactly what it looks like. Anything from the viewers?
Well, Brad says the September Heisman is up for grabs, and according to the Victor's board, the bloom is off the Harbaugh rose. Well, yeah, I would assume that needing double overtime to beat Army, that's just...
I said to you at some point in that game, maybe after his second fumble, Shea Patterson's second fumble, that it might just be time to go to Dylan McCaffrey. Mm-hmm. And I don't know that maybe they don't like the way he throws it. Maybe they like Patterson's arm better. But you can't trust Patterson throwing the ball, or you can't trust him running the ball. Mm-hmm. He's becoming, Tom, he's O'Corning. He is.
Let's not go too far.
He's just approaching it. He's headed that way. I'm not saying he's there yet, but there's if you squint a little, there's a lot of similarities to them.
Yeah. Mike says, I think Cincinnati's going to go into a solid season. Quarterback is accurate. Team plays hard, and most of the penalties were due to the speed advantage for Ohio State. I mean, that is a good team, and we talked all week about the fact that that's a good team. They looked like they did not belong on the same field as Ohio State today, and they probably didn't. But a week ago, they beat UCLA at home, and they beat them by 10 points. And that's not a great UCLA team, but if you beat a probably 5-6 win Pac-12 team by 10 points, that is probably a team that would go, that Cincinnati team in the Big Ten, 6 wins, 7 wins maybe, 8 wins if you have the right schedule across division. They won 11 games last year. That's a pretty good Cincinnati team. So, they are. This is a win that I think it's very easy to look at now and go, oh, you beat an unranked team by 42 points. Who cares? At the end of the year, if this is a 9-3 Cincinnati team, on Selection Sunday, this is something that goes on your list of quality wins. If Cincinnati is all of a sudden number 18 in the country in early December,
I think offensively for Ohio State, we had talked last week about how they didn't show much and didn't need to. One new thing we saw this week was they're running some offense out of the pistol. Mm-hmm. Last week they went under center and surprised us. This week they did that and then also added the pistol, and I think one of Dobbins' good runs came from that. So that was just another wrinkle as they continue to add things in, and who knows what else is to come. But just a really good full performance by both sides of the ball. Special teams, again, is fine. No complaints there. Anything else from the viewers?
No, I think we're kind of caught up on. I think we're caught up on questions right now. So,
anything? You got any closing thoughts, closing arguments, closing songs?
Yeah, I do have a closing song.
All right, let's hear it.
Yeah, it seems like you could walk away from this game ready to put Ohio State in the college football playoff. Like that seems like something that if you were an Ohio State fan watching that game, I can see how you're ready to crown this team. You know, hey, Clemson looked bad in the first quarter against Texas A&M, or I don't think Alabama's played yet, and they don't play anyone really.
They're playing New Mexico State right now. They're beating them up.
Yeah. So, you know, that this is probably up there with the most impressive wins so far this season very early. It's early, but if Ohio State was going to go on to really big things this year, that's a lot like what it would look like. I personally am still, you know, let's see how it looks on the road next week against Indiana. Let's see how it looks on the road.
Let's see how they handle
at Nebraska.
Success.
Yeah, exactly. The Ohio State as a program has generally been better when people are down on them, bad-mouthing them, doubting them, than they have been when things are going great. They beat Penn State 2 years ago, huge dramatic comeback, everyone's excited, what a win, and then they just go lay an absolute egg on the road at Iowa. And they lay that egg on the road at Iowa, and they come back and they just put Michigan State in a blender the week after that. And they have to, and this is a little bit of a different coaching staff, so maybe they're going to handle success a little differently this year. But they have to figure that out. They have to figure out handling success, building on it, not getting caught up in the hype, and sort of managing all of that. So as an Ohio State fan listening to this, you need to sort of manage your expectations on that, and there will be a game where they give up points later this year. It's probably going to happen. It may happen next week at Indiana. It's
like
going to
any points?
Yes, some sort of points.
Okay.
Yes, like maybe they just take an intentional safety. I don't know. If they do, it's okay. Deep breaths.
Right.
Bring in the jive. Push out the love. No, vice versa. It'll be fine. This is a very good start to this Ohio State season. There's a long way to go till November, till December, till Selection Sunday, but there is a lot to be encouraged about in all phases of the game right now. And the fact that it's not just, hey, the offense is raining hellfire on everyone and that's making up for the defense.
Exactly.
The fact that it's looking good in all phases of the game, that's probably the most encouraging thing.
And if they do go out to Indiana next week and the offense does struggle, you can rely on your defense to keep things close, or to, you know, where if you only need 21 points, if you can only manage 21 points, that might be enough to win for a change.
Yeah.
Last year they gave up 25 points a game. This year maybe they have a defense that they can give you hold a team to 10, and that's less pressure on the offense. Because how often last year did they have so much pressure on the offense to score? And now it's a complete team where they're helping each other out, and it looks pretty good. But yeah, like you said, it's game 2. We'll see how things go next week, but I'll be interested to see. You know, there was a lot of fans who were upset. There were a lot of fans who were upset last week with the way they shut down after 9 minutes. I'll be interested to see how they are reacting this week, and if it just sets them up to be angry about something next week if things don't go great. But it was a good performance. Be happy with it. Enjoy it. Go watch it again, and know that maybe these guys are pretty good.
Yeah, I think Ohio State may be good at football. What a time to be alive.
And with that, we will bid you adieu. Have a good day, everybody. Make sure to check out all the coverage at theozone.net. We've got plenty there for you. We've got all kinds of stuff. It's amazing. Videos, post-game stuff. And check out the rest of the shows on the Ozone Radio Network. Check it all out. We'll see you.